This is the Wandering Mike.
Welcome everyone to the Wandering Mike. Today I'm here with Darren. Hey Darren, how you doing?
Hi, Mike. I'm good, thank you.
Nice. I'm looking forward. Um, we already talked a little bit, so I feel like we can have a good conversation, and we're gonna be talking about things that we're both passionate about. Maybe some more as well. So yeah, if you just want to get us started, Darren, and tell us a little bit about yourself, your life, your journey, anything you want to share to start.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. What a fun show to share about our passion of travel. I grew up in a family that loves travel. Uh, I think maybe my grandparents were ahead of their time enjoying travel, but I remember them coming back from their trips and hearing the exciting stories. But as a kid too, I don't remember my first time on a plane. My family did like to travel. Um, at the very least, we went to Disneyland every winter to have 2 weeks in Florida to escape the winter because I came from New Brunswick in Canada, which is cold in the winter. So leaving -10 and going to plus 25 Celsius, um,
Yeah.
it's a great thing to do in the middle of winter. So it was a family tradition. Um, really, we spent a couple of Christmases there as well, but usually it was just midwinter. Um, when I when I graduated university the first time, and I say the first time because, Mike, I've had a typical ADHD life. I've had quite a few different lives, and that's maybe a remnant of our nomadic ancestors who continually were looking for different things. But you will notice the ADHD sometimes because my train does leave the station. But I'll get on a train of thought. Don't forget where that train of thought came. But anyway, after university, I had done a degree in business and I was bored to tears when I was doing my applications for the work that was available with a degree in business. The tedium of the application I didn't see anything I wanted to do. So I jumped on a plane and went to London, England. It seemed like a good idea. And I had just the 2-year student work abroad visa is what I did.
Right.
At the time, for Canadians, there was a 2-year visa for under age 26. So I stopped in London, going from never having lived in a city, well, from Fredericton. Fredericton's a city of 50,000, 60,000. It's, so going from that to London was really exciting, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
It was, and I met a lot of Australians and Kiwis and people from all over Europe, of course. It was an adventure in every different kind of way. But in the end, London was so expensive and so busy and so competitive that I found myself working 6 days a week. And then on my day off, I was trying to get ready to work for 6 days a week. And so that wasn't why I wanted to live in England. I wanted to experience the local life, not just as one of the workers, but actually one of the people living life. And it wasn't working out. So after 6 months, my boss, they gave me a holiday and I took it up to Scotland and landed in Edinburgh. And I had been living in London for 6 months, as I had said. And I had been going to the local pub across the street from my place once a week. I just trying to meet the locals. I just could not break into there. I couldn't, I made friends at work. I was, but everyone lived so far away from each other. You work together and then you go off to your own places, take hours to visit each other in London, the way that, so, in Edinburgh, it was just so friendly and so easy. And I was there for a day and made friends. And the first day hanging out at a coffee shop because it was quiet and slower and friendly. And, oh, where are you from? Oh, that's cool. Guess where he's from. All of a sudden you're in the
Right.
people were interested and curious and friendly. So I went back to London and quit my job moved to Edinburgh. Social matters. It's all about the people for me. When it comes to the travel, for me, it's not so much about buildings and the views. It really is about the locals. It's about experiencing different kinds of lifestyles. As as a kid, I was always fascinated by the idea of, what if I was born into a Muslim factory, into a Muslim family in Pakistan? What would my life look like? I just remember
Mm.
thinking, and would that mean I'm any more or less than others if I was born there instead of where I was born? And I figured, no, it wouldn't, but I want to see what that looks like. Um, but I also, I live now in Toronto, and I live downtown Toronto, and it's basically well, sometimes I'm the only white guy in the room. We're extremely multicultural.
Mm.
Like, on the floor of my condo building, there's probably 10 different ethnicities. Um, or countries of origin represented just on my floor of 15 units. It's so I had a real curiosity to see where my neighbors and friends come from as well.
Yeah.
So, because lots of families from India and lots of families from Pakistan and, well, all over the world, really. The Philippines,
Mm.
those are the most common, really, of my friends. It's Oh, Brazil, a lot of Brazilians here too. My goodness. Oh, Ukraine. Anyway, all over the world, and that really inspired my interest to visit other countries. And I started with the UK. That's my own background. Um, so my family heritage is Scottish, and a little bit removed. But boy, it was fun spending a year and a half in Scotland. Have you had a chance to travel in Scotland, Mike?
So actually, I have been very shortly. I think it's been like 10 years ago for me. I've been with my parents. We started in London actually, and we just did a road trip up to Scotland. And I think the northernmost we got was Inverness. So we did
Oh,
go to
sure.
Edinburgh, and then we went to Inverness and tried to make out Loch Ness and the Loch Ness monster, but she didn't show herself when we were there. Um,
Yeah.
no, I remember, that I liked the city of Edinburgh a lot. We as I was there with my parents for I think only 1 or 2 nights, didn't get too much into the local life there, but I
Yeah.
remember, really liking the city. And actually in Christchurch, so here in New Zealand, I met a friend. He's originally from New York, so from the States, and he had just been coming from Scotland, where he lived for 5 years. He also
Oh,
told me how friendly of a city it was. So I kind of, when you said, "Oh, the people were so friendly there," I was thinking of him
oh,
because he also
yeah.
was like so amazed by how friendly the people are.
Yeah, I mean, I come from the East Coast of Canada, and that's actually extremely friendly as well. So it was there wasn't so much amazement as the contrast from London. It was like, oh yes, this is what I need.
Mm.
I need people who recognize me and say hello and care, and I can talk to, and they talk to me. And it's
Yeah,
yeah, it was so much easier. And of course, the cost of living in Edinburgh was very, very different than London. It has gotten more
right.
expensive, like all the world class cities. But um,
Mm.
I took 2 jobs at the beginning before I had, before I had a group. And so I got an office job, which I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to. But anyway, it worked out in the end. I never got shit for it. I worked at Standard Life for a year and a half. They had their head office there, and I had a degree in business. But I also worked at a cafe in the evening. Instead of going back to my flat in the evening, I thought, well, why don't be social at a cafe? And that became my first friend, the other servers there. And it was just fun, to meet all the people that you do in a cafe for someone who's gregarious and outgoing. Um, so
Yeah.
I did that until I had too many friends. And then I just quit the cafe because I needed time for my social life. Um, but I recommend that, for travelers. See part-time work as an opportunity to meet others, like, and look at the job in that sort of frame, thinking like, what would it be like to look here? Does it seem friendly? Is it a nice place? Because there are very different workplaces, especially in the UK. I noticed there were some places where it was like, next, next. And then, the energy of the was just, oh, um, and then there's
Yeah.
other places where the energy was like, hi, how are you today? Would you like your coffee? So you got to choose wisely those jobs when you're traveling around the world. Um, it changes your experience from one experience to another experience. You don't think about it, but your whole day matters. The mood of your day matters, right? It's going to impact how you feel, and it's going to impact how you feel about that place. Um,
Definitely.
and I met a number of Germans when I was in Edinburgh. Um, they were the most common singers. I was a singer, and
Yes.
I only recently got back into singing, but I joined the Royal Edinburgh Choral Union, and the only other gentlemen my age were three German guys. It was,
Oh,
and then there was a
wow.
leap in age, and then there were Scottish guys from like age 40 and up. But when it came to the
Mm.
20s, it was just, um, yeah. So I recognize that music is a big thing in Germany. Certainly traveling through, I noticed, wow, there's a lot of music companies here. We tend to have like one opera company in a city. Like, that's not true in Germany. There tends to be a whole bunch of opera companies. Yeah, I can't help but notice that.
Yeah, it's still something that we're kind of trying to use as a creative outlet, kind of. Is our singing.
Yeah, right,
Um,
right. It seemed
among
like it's commonplace.
Yeah, it's like sing and dance. Also depends on which part of Germany actually, but like most places still have like their traditional dances as well that they're still trying to like preserve and yeah. I mean, obviously, it's not the first thing you think about if you think of Germany. You're not thinking about artistic people, I reckon, but we're still trying to kind of preserve these traditions.
I mean, I when I think of Germany, classical music is something that does come to my mind, but I like classical music,
Right.
so. Um, Last year, I was lucky to be able to visit Hamburg, uh, which is a really handsome city, uh,
Oh,
even
yes.
in January.
Yeah, probably
It was
was pretty
cold.
cold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like here, right? It was like home, um, but what a handsome city. I hadn't really actually had it on my radar, but, we did a cruise last winter, and Hamburg was one of the stops on that cruise, and it was,
Right.
yeah, it was a nice surprise. Um, yeah, cruising is such a convenient, easy way to see different places. You just get back into your hotel, and then the next day you get off, and now you're in a different place. Um, it's not for everyone. It's very place to place to place, but it gives you a lot of little adventures. That's for sure.
Yeah, I feel like Europe is a really good place for it as well because everything is kind of close compared to like if you would say North America. And definitely you have so many different countries very, very close to each other and so many different cultures. So yeah, it's easy to go from Germany to Denmark to Sweden to Norway and all these places relatively quickly. I don't know what you got to see on your cruise, but I mean the UK, the Netherlands, like all these things are very close to each other and all at the ocean. So I reckon
Yeah,
it's kind of easy to see a lot on a cruise there.
I was surprised how many major cities are near enough to the water that that we could go into
Yeah.
them on a ship. I didn't realize. Yeah, um, we started in England, in Southampton, which is where the Titanic ended, had its last sailing from, I guess. Um,
Mm.
so there's a Titanic museum in Southampton. It's the only thing really. There's a Titanic museum, and there's and there's a port to the cruises to leave. Um, so we got to see Rotterdam and Bruges. Um, oh my gosh, Bruges is beautiful, right? The medieval city of Bruges. Um, if anyone wants to see a medieval classic, it's one to put on the radar. It's just the most beautiful little cookie cutters.
I've heard so many good things. I have been working with Belgian people for like 2 or 3 years, and everyone said you had to go to Bruges, but I haven't seen it yet myself. So,
Yeah, because so much of Europe really had a lot of decimation from wars. So there's not a lot of these really preserved areas that have it is um it's an enriching feeling to be there. Uh and it really was unique. We went to 21 different places and there was nothing else like it. Um of those 21 destinations. It was so unique. Of course, all the destinations were unique in their own way, but it stood out in particular. And when I'm thinking of medieval and standing out that kind of way, the other one that comes to my mind was Slovenia. Um,
oh,
it it is a lovely destination. If it's not on your radar, add it to your radar. It is. It's. I mean, it's nestled in between Croatia and Italy and Serbia, and and you feel like you're in Italy. I mean, I felt like it was Italy. I mean, but
mm,
um, again, I stayed in the city of Ljubljana, and that's starts with double
right.
L, LLJ
Yeah,
UBLJANA. In case anyone wants to look it up, you would
yeah.
phonetically very easily. LLJ is the first. But, Ljubljana, it's another preserved, beautiful medieval town
Mm,
with a waterway snaking through it, and the kind of
oh,
place where it just felt magical. There's a literal castle on a hill, uh, behind like the main drag, and there's a like a farmer's market where you walk around with glasses of the local prosecco, and the local prosecco, which tasted like prosecco, was 110 euros at the market. I mean,
mm,
150 euros would be that's absurd. Like that was really,
that's
really cheap. Um,
that is
so
super
yeah,
cheap.
so having Slovenia Prosecco when you're in Slovenia, it's $4. But they had things like they had a milk machine, and the milk that came out of this machine, it tasted so fresh, it tasted so different, but it was filled by farmers um,
Mm,
every other day, and you had to bring your own bottle and put it up to the machine, and
oh,
and it was
mm,
just
milk
outdoors, and you
machine.
just put your coins in, and I loved that. I was there for a month. It was
Oh,
I
cool.
had yeah I had travel's always been my recharge my whole life. It's always been where I go to feel better. And I had had just a ridiculous breakup, um, where I was in a romantic relationship that seemed like it was going on. There were things that were going wrong and that were confusing about it. But I mean, we were living together. It felt romantic. I thought this was my soulmate. We had a conversation about buying a house in a different city this one day.
Right.
And, and I said, no, I don't, no, I'm never, and I don't want to live there. Like, never? No, no, I don't want to live there. I want to stay in Toronto. We were then immediately done. Um, from being a couple to not being a couple over that conversation. I didn't even realize until the next day. Um, I overheard that we were no longer a couple. And they
Mm,
got off the phone and was like, well, yeah, I mean, if you didn't want to buy that house, but he went from 100% to zero. Like it was cold. It was just a very cold. The ending being so abrupt. I mean, going from like this and suddenly having a crash ending, I became unfunctional.
yeah.
I was, it's weird for someone to be empathic and then care about you and then not care about you. I mean,
just
it
because
turned
of
out
one
empathy was
thing like that.
yeah. I would later come to understand it's called devaluation. And um, I had gone to Slovenia trying to recover, and I was studying about how can I get how can I get over this breakup? I was so tortured, and I didn't
Right.
understand. And so I was in Slovenia studying, and I discovered narcissism, and I recognized, oh, I was with a narcissist. Oh my gosh. And so I'm reading and listening to podcasts and reading books about narcissism in Slovenia on my Kindle and on my computer. Um, and I'm, walking down the medieval streets and pondering and figuring out my life. And how did that tie into there? But anyway, it became my topic in the end. And it became something that was so important to me that I ended up becoming a therapist after that. It took 7 years later, I'm a therapist who works with narcissists. Um, but that journey started in Slovenia, but it happened because I had a
Right.
narcissistically abusive relationship. And I didn't recognize it. Like I didn't recognize it because it was familiar. Whatever you grow up in is going to be normal for you. You may not know,
Mhm.
if you grew up in an abusive household. Almost everyone says, "Oh, my childhood was okay. It was all right." And
Right.
as a therapist, when I get them talking, like, okay, that is not okay. That was not
Mm.
normal. Yeah. In most households, dad did not shout at mom every single night. That was just your house. Like they don't know that. They don't know it's different. Um, so trying to weave in the stories of narcissists. So that was a life changing place for me. But I recommend anyone go to Slovenia. It really is. It has beautiful landscapes as well, and caves to explore, and castles. There's a place called Lake Bled, Bled. It is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen anywhere. Um, it's just this beautiful lake um, with the trees. I know there's a like a Gothic castle, and then in the middle there's like a Gothic church on an island, and that's all that's in the middle is this Gothic sort of church structure. And
That sounds
so there's
beautiful.
and they and there's no electric motors. They want to keep it quiet, so they have
Oh,
traditional people taking you across to the island on these boats that they're standing up on with the paddle. It's sort of like a
right.
gondola that you'd see in Venice, but it's not. Different thing. Um, the gondola is using a pole that they're pushing, and it has to be a paddle that they're actually going through a lake. But
Mm.
um, it was such a special place and such an unexpected place, just um, something I'd never heard of or seen, and it really was magical. Uh, yeah, it's just I
It
love
sounds very
unexpected.
romantic and like a very preserved place in a way. Like when you explained that, I had all these pictures in my mind of this magical place. It really sounds Slovenia definitely is on my list now after what you just told us about it.
Oh, good. Yeah, it was a friendly place as well. It's more affordable than all the neighbors, um,
Right.
but has the same flavor. And
Yeah.
really, you cross the border between Italy and Slovenia, you're not going to suddenly like, oh, I've changed country. You're not going to really notice. I mean,
Right.
it's the landscape is similar, the architecture is similar, but it has that preserved, beautiful downtown of Ljubljana. Um, yeah, I had I've had other recovery journeys as well. Uh,
Yeah.
I think travel is so good for our souls. It certainly is good for my soul. Um, I really felt when I
Definitely.
left New Brunswick for England, I had been in New Brunswick all my growing up years, and I really felt like a plant that had new soil. Like I felt like at home I was looking at my opportunities and I was feeling like I was feeling suffocated. And then when I opened up my
Mm.
world by going somewhere else, I realized, oh my gosh, I can make my world bigger. Like when you travel, you expand your world every time you go to
Yes.
another place, your world has expanded. Your experience of the world has got bigger and broader. Um, and that's what the other thing I noticed when I went from New Brunswick to London was, if ever I hate my life, recognize that I can change everything in an instant. Because literally from one day in New Brunswick to the next day in London, everything in life was different from one day to the next day, right? Like, the transportation, what I was doing, like everything was different. It really, um, it sort of amazed me and be like, yeah, you can change everything if you need to. Like uh, I really am a believer that you only live once. And I mean, maybe you do live more than once, but we got to make the most of the life we have for sure. And you only have your 20s once and your 30s once and your 40s once. No, it's for me, having a variety of experiences makes my life feel more meaningful. I'm not sure how it feels to others, but it gives me a different grounding, it, I like
Yeah,
to
I
know where people,
definitely I definitely, in my experience, helps just having a different perspective. Because if you grow up in a place and you stay at that place, and you can have an awesome life in your place, but your perspective will be changed to that place and how things are done on this place. And the more I've seen and the more different cultures I've experienced, and um, just seeing, oh, so they do things in a different way here, but also while they do it in a different way, still all these things we are the same. And just like
yeah,
seeing
yeah,
that all over the world, yeah, really enriches your mind and just um yeah, for me also helps you enjoy everything you encounter so much more because you have this broader perspective.
yeah, yeah, so much so. I I work as a therapist in a diverse city, so my clients are of every different nationality and background. And um, my travels inform my work with clients to such a degree because it really informs
Right.
how I understand what they're coming from. I had the experience of being in Mumbai. Um, well, I was telling you before we came on, my first experience in
Mm.
Mumbai was Airbnb because I thought, well, you know what, I'll stay with locals when I first arrive and until I get the
Yeah.
ropes. So I was surprised to arrive to a mother and son and a German tourist at a one-bedroom apartment where the four of us were now staying. Um, they had accidentally double booked, but
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun. In fact, I was just up for the adventure. I was at first assessing the fact that my bed was like so narrow, but it was wide enough. It wasn't like it was more narrow than I was. Um, the
Mm.
space between my bed and my house was like I couldn't put my foot down straight. I would have to, no, squeeze between the bed.
Right.
No, no, no. I never imagined even I'd be sleeping in the same room as my host, let alone like this
Mm.
host or it's like I could accidentally, but it was such an adventure and it was such a weird. It was so um outside of my normal experience. And it's really good to do that because it
Yeah.
creates more flexibility of mind. And I had the unusual experiences of like his mom waking him up at 4:30 for yoga every morning and then him going back to bed. And it was like, wow, that's different, eh? Like every morning.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, my mom has a cult. Like, oh, yeah. It's like, yeah, she has like over 1 million
Wow.
followers. Like, oh my goodness. And so
Oh,
he
wow.
called his mom a cult leader. Cult leader is not like a bad term. It can be. And but in
Yeah.
this case, they just call it like it is. Yes, it's a cult. They have a following and they believe and they have
Right.
beliefs in her and beliefs in that. It's a cult and there's lots of them and it's just the way it is. And that's what she does all day. Um, in this one bedroom apartment, it was a mother and a son and their full-time housekeeper and 2 guests at the time. Um, it was so 5 of us in this one-bedroom apartment. It really was quite a good experience for me because it was actually also a very typical Indian feeling experience because they do tend to live more people in apartments than I'm used to. Um, we live so alone in the West, and our
Mm.
incidences of depression are show it, and our incidents of anxiety show it, demonstrate that we live too alone in the West. In the West, so many of us have the goal of like, I want to afford to live alone. Like, why?
Mm.
I do get it. I do get it. But they're in a more communal style of living. And we really thrive in community when we have people around us who feel like family, who we trust and interact with. We really thrive. The next place I stayed in Mumbai was another Airbnb, but I was staying by myself this time in a different region because Mumbai it's a mega city. So I recognized if I
It's
stay in 3
huge,
different
right?
regions, I've just stayed in 3 different cities. They're all called Mumbai, but I, I had 3
Yeah.
totally, I chose 3 completely different neighborhoods. So, um, so the second neighborhood I chose was, well, I was staying by myself but in a very local building. And I was upset that the listing for the unit was nothing like the unit itself. It didn't bear any resemblance to the listing. It said internet. It didn't have internet. It said air conditioning.
Mm.
Didn't have air
Yeah.
conditioning. It said toilet. It didn't have a real toilet. Like it literally had almost nothing of what it said it had. Um, so, so that was an issue. That was the problem. And the owner said, "Well, we'll have it eventually. We're just starting." And they're like, "Well, you can't sell air conditioning in somewhere that's 35 degrees when you don't have it. It's not helping me that you're getting
Yeah.
it next year." Um, then he offered to take me to the community pool, and because TV was one of the things he had checked off, I also
Mm.
welcomed to visit his parents who lived about 10 blocks away to watch TV with them. Um, and he wasn't kidding. Like I could. They didn't speak any English. He did introduce me. I was going
Right.
to make watch TV with his parents, but um, but the lack of boundaries was really interesting. I mean, the way
Yeah.
that they trust each other so much. You're like, oh yeah, this stranger, yeah, just go hang out with my parents, and they don't speak English, but just they'll be fine. Just come and go as you like. It's like, I'm not doing that. You could. The other thing in that building where I was just having a unit, in the evening, all the units left their doors open.
Oh,
They
really?
Yeah, so I did too because I noticed it was
Yeah.
they were coming and going from each other's units. Like, women were
Mm.
were bringing things over there, and people were sharing babies, and like, like, "Can you take care of this one while I'm at the fire?" sort of thing, and like, it was
Right.
just like it was like they all lived together communally, so they didn't close the doors. That was really special. I really
That is quite remarkable, actually.
Yeah, it was touching for me to see that. Um, but I was touched a lot, many times in India. It's, in all sorts of different ways. In some good ways and some bad ways. But in the end, what an enriching country it is. What a, um, challenging country to visit for sure, but so enriching, so much newness. There are so many treasures, for one. Like, the incredible landmark treasures that are in that country are it's hard to believe how many there are. Um, like, just magnificent. And of course, the Taj Mahal was one of them. And
Yeah.
the Taj Mahal, it was breathtaking. There is a feeling there. That doesn't get captured in a photo. Um, because it's so detailed. Like, like there's details up to an inch. Like, it's not like it's
Mm.
flat wall. It's carved and like it's detailed, that thing.
Right.
that, that
Okay.
enormous influence. Um, and there's a simplicity and a complexity and a perfect mirror feeling. Like it really does feel harmonious there. Um, except then if you walk out the door, oh my heavens, the town of Agra is such an opposite experience to the Taj Mahal in Agra. It has
Really.
open sewers. If you walk down a local street, it is like, um,
Right.
like one of the worst for the places I visited in 3 months. Uh, so that was an unusual contrast to have that. Of course, I may have been there during sewage time or something. That was what it always is. Um, but but it's the people that I really remember. When I think of the Taj Mahal, I actually remember the kid who was wearing the cowboy hat who wanted pictures together. Those kinds of little memories stir up more than anything else. Um, One of my other favorite India, oh, there's some favorite India stories. They're all about people. I stayed with a senior couple in Calcutta, and um, I don't know if you've seen the British show Keeping Up with Appearances. But it's a show where there's a woman named Mrs. Bucket, and she calls herself Mrs. Bouquet. And she's always trying to look good in front of the neighbors. And everything she does is to making sure that everything, and she's so very pretty, proper, and she would never do anything that wasn't just so. That was my host. She she didn't call her staff by their names. She was
Right.
security, Mr. Elliott, like. So the two of them, this senior retired couple, live in a colonial mansion. Like it was this enormous 3-story edifice in the middle of high-rise apartment buildings. It was the only colonial home left in the neighborhood. It had like a swimming pool out back. Like it had a property, and then it was just like building, 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 because it was downtown Calcutta. Um,
Right.
but but his father was in the colonial government, so they have, they're they have, I guess they had a lot of collateral from that. Um, but they were so out of touch. They were lovely, and it seemed like I was a hobby for them.
Mhm.
Because he was a collector. He was shopping every day, like online. He's already online shopping by then. Wow. Like the stairways were just full of things hung up. He just kept buying more stuff. So I figured, they didn't really need the Airbnb. They seemed very, like they wanted me to join them for dinner every evening. That was their preference. If you can join us for dinner. Um, and
Mm.
then that was, conversation time with the couple. And that it really seemed like they were, gregarious, friendly, outgoing people who spoke English really well and probably enjoyed getting to know people from different countries in their homes. Um,
Right.
it was a lovely exchange. It was the thing that stood out for me that I always remember. There were a few, I guess. Um, One, there was a guard dog out front. There was a security building with 2 security guys who seemed to live there and a dog.
Yeah.
And I had my own balcony. I was on the 3rd floor, but I had a balcony that actually had a staircase all the way down to the ground. Um,
Cool.
and the dog used to come up the stairs, hang out with me on the balcony. And I'm cuddling the dog, petting the dog. Um, I didn't know any different. It was the next day. She was like, "Don't go near that dog. Oh, he's dangerous." And she was telling me how
Oh.
dangerous the dog is, the security dog. And I was like, "Oh, I guess I better tell her that she's coming to visit every night."
Yeah.
Um, but she was really out of touch. One of the things she said during our dinners, um, was most of Indians are middle class now. Most people I know are middle class. And I'm sitting there having just
Like,
been served by someone who's not middle class. Having I can see someone who sleeps on the floor in the kitchen who's not middle class. I know that woman who
right.
made my bed wasn't middle class. I know the 2 guys that are in the security booth, they're not enjoying middle class lifestyles. And the pool boy is also not enjoying a middle class lifestyle. She was absolutely blind to the 8 other humans
Mm,
in her household as being humans that could
right.
potentially have a middle class life. Didn't even imagine, like, oh, yes, most of us are middle class now. I don't know anyone who's not. Like, 8
Mm,
people who aren't. Like, it was that out of touch. It was that invisible.
brilliant.
And um, so that was fascinating to learn, but also fascinating to learn from Calcutta was, um, they wanted me to know that Mother Teresa was not a blessing to Calcutta. She was a demon to Calcutta. And people had a lot of trauma over Mother Teresa. In fact,
Oh,
because she had a belief that it was beautiful to suffer unto death. And her goal was to get street people off the street so that they had a dignified death. And she received a lot of funding, but she ended up taking street people off the street to die who would not have died otherwise because they were not
mm,
treating any of the conditions that were extremely treatable. They weren't treating very basic conditions with that would have, you know, with antibiotics and all. Like they were just allowing people to die clean deaths. And families were like, it was actually a thing. Families were, claiming that she killed people because she had
mm,
taken them away and not given them treatment
no,
because people were bringing people there to her thinking, oh, she's healing them. She wasn't healing anyone.
right.
It was a huge PR for the Roman Catholic Church. Um, and to the locals of Calcutta, they saw it in a very different way because it was not medical healing. It was suffering until death. And she was like a martyr. She was, so that was an unusual thing to learn as well. Um, from Calcutta. That's not the image most people see when they think of Mother Teresa.
Yeah, it's so interesting to, like, in general, hear parts of history retold from the perspectives of different countries. And I mean, obviously, the locals must know better than we do, never having been there. So it's, yeah, that's so eye opening. Just have these perspectives from the people actually living through it.
Yeah, when you Google it, you can actually find the information. It's not like but the PR
Right.
campaign that it was a PR campaign to the Roman Catholic Church. So they said what they wanted to say. Uh, but another family story yeah, in the city of Mysore. It's the city of Mysore, which is near Bangalore. Bangalore is more known because it's a huge city that has a lot of IT. Um,
Yeah.
quite often when we're talking to someone on the phone and they're in India, they're often in Bangalore. Uh, but Mysore nearby, I stayed with a family of four, and they had like a 13-year-old girl and a 15-year-old boy, and a mother and father. And dad had a restaurant, and they had a granny suite, and it was a nice house. It was a 5-bedroom house plus a granny suite. So
Mm.
they rented out their granny suite. Um, they They asked me 3 days into my stay if I would be willing to move in with them from the granny suite, and if so, they could rent the granny suite to someone else because we were getting along so well. And I said, "Oh, yeah, let's do that." So I went. So I ended up having the opportunity to actually live with them in their unit, as
Right.
well. But I had been joining them in the evenings anyway. I was welcome to join for dinner, and that truly was a highlight of the day.
Mm.
I mean, there were a lot of highlights, but I can tell you the family dinners, getting to know the family, getting to know the kids and being part of their stay. And, mom's talking about school and stuff, and they're sharing about things, and they're learning about Canada, and I'm learning about being a kid in
Mm.
Mysore. Um, it was, it was, uh, it was really sweet. They were such a connected, loving family. Um, it was, what was really sweet was one of the things that was really sweet. Um, they they slept all together.
Mm.
Like they all wanted to be in the same room for sleeping, and it was just very cozy. And they each had bedrooms, but they didn't use them when it came to actual bedtime. They would be like off in their bedrooms. And then I noticed like when it came to sleep time, they all wanted to be in the same room. Um,
Oh, wow.
that was so different. And they had dogs, which was unusual. I mean, it's less common to have dogs as pets. It is common to have dogs outside your house uh, in India,
Mm.
but it's not so common to have them in pets in the way that we do here in Canada, for example, where there's leopard there. Oh, he's too far over. There he is.
Oh, yes.
It's being so quiet. Being so quiet. Um, so they had dogs there as well, and he was welcome to come visit me in my room when I was in the ground suite. And they lived in a cave. They had this cave sort of burrowed out, built into the house. It was a nice cave. It was like a Disneyland cave. It was a nice sort
Oh.
of in the area that looked like a cave from the outside, and it was this cozy den for the dogs and had blankets and stuff. Um, I um, trying to remember how that started. My laundry disappeared. My
Hey.
dirty laundry disappeared. Most of it, but not all of it. Like some of my dirty laundry disappeared. So I was curious, and I thought, well, that would be weird. The housekeeper would take some of the laundry. Um, I didn't know if she was taking laundry or not, but it's like some's here, some isn't here. And then I don't remember what I was doing, but I saw the dog walk along the roof, and then there it goes blocking the roof with a pair of my underwear hanging out of his mouth, going back. I saw him coming again. He was taking my laundry piece by piece by piece out of my dirty laundry, taking it back to his cave.
It
Um,
was.
and then um, I don't, the cleaner was horrified, and she cleaned my laundry for me after the dog had chewed it. But on the line, there were so many holes in the underwear from where the dog had chewed through them. It's like looking at the tattered underwear on the line was almost shameful, because like not everyone looking at your tattered, ripped up underwear knows that a dog chewed it.
Right.
It was kind of funny looking at all these tattered, ripped up underwears. Um, pretending like nothing was like, okay, that you're not okay. So we're all ripped up. Uh, but and that family, I'm still on my Facebook all these years later. That family was a Hindu family, and um, and it was an opportunity to learn about those differences in culture as well, because I found a rickshaw driver who was Muslim, and I didn't
Mm.
realize that Muslims and Hindus aren't as close as they could be. And so he was a little bit afraid of my family, and they were just absolutely curious about him. They kept so I met this really nice rickshaw driver, and he was honest and friendly, and he could speak a little bit of English. So I hired him for the week because I was like, okay, this
Mm.
doesn't happen. Um, so he just came and picked me up every day at that house, and we just went somewhere else. And he and the family decided where the best adventures would be for me to go for the day. And
Mm.
every day the family wanted him to come in, and he would not come in. It was really odd to see that. They had a metal gate, and he just would not pass that gate. And they kept inviting him across the gate, and he never did do that. Um, he really did have a feeling of discomfort. Um, he on day 4, I think one of the days he took me to visit his family, and that was really special too. His wife made us lunch, and it might have been the different class that made him feel the fear, because I think most people are aware there's this very strong class system in India. Like
Right.
it's um it's a rigid class system, and it's been it's partly based on skin color too. Um, I had some bad experiences, well, vicariously. Um, yeah, the trains jumping into a different thing. I had some bad experiences where I met some friends who were quite dark skinned. They literally weren't allowed in the same restaurant. They were stopped at the door, so we didn't go in. But
Oh, wow.
yeah, that was in Mumbai. It was a fancy place, and they told me it probably happened, and I didn't believe them. Uh, so there's colorism going on. Um, Took me away from my story. Oh, he lived in an abode it was made in like tin and tarps, and it had a dirt floor, so it was very very basic. Sort of an outdoor toilet, and cooking over fire, like really really basic. Um, a shanty town, and so I think because the standard of living was so different than the family I was staying in, that made me what caused the feeling of insecurity that he would step through the gates. But um, yeah, it was mysterious to me. The family said there is some division between the different cultures there, but in their case, they didn't feel that division. In fact, their cook was Muslim, and because they
Mm.
make better biryani, that's what they said.
Mhm.
Muslims make the best biryani. Um, so that's something. Yeah, I mean, India is a whole world on it to itself. If you have time to go to different places, they're just different worlds. There's the different regions have different food, um, different clothes, different dances, different music. Like there's because the history is so long, right? It- Countries like Canada, we don't have such a long history. We don't have any great
Right.
cultures of our own way of dance from my hometown. My hometown was founded by people from England. It doesn't have a long heritage.
Mhm.
We certainly did have some First Nations heritage, but um, that was all but decimated by colonialism. That's for another stuff. stuff. Oh, back to India. Have you had a chance to go to India yet? Of course, Goa was there too.
Yeah, no, I haven't been to India yet. I had like actually when I was studying in Germany, there were a lot of Indian students that were studying at my college, and it's obviously totally different because it was in Germany. But I kind of, when you were talking about how familiar they are with each other and the community sense, that's what I really loved about them because they were all, I mean, they had their own apartments because you have like students' apartments that are subsidized and that are relatively cheap in Germany. So everyone had like their own student apartment, but still like the six, the seven of them would always hang out in the same apartment, like spend the whole day with each other, cooking, just hanging out in the living room, some off in the kitchen, bringing food around. And that, like you've said, that community thing really amazed me as well, and just how friendly they were, and just like always inviting you to join them as well. Um, but yeah, I've also heard stories from my friends that have been in India. But like you said, I probably would have no idea where to start because it's such a big country. It's like so huge.
Yeah, and I mean, there's challenges to be talked about that happened there too. It wasn't all it wasn't all perfect, but challenges are part of travel. You learn resilience and you learn patience and you learn to deal with frustration and you learn adaptability and you do the best you can and you make the most of what's going on. Sometimes the destination is not what they said it was. Um,
Yeah.
that happens often. That happened often. Oh, I had a scam in Goa where I rented a bungalow for $45 a night on within the middle of a bunch of bungalows on the beach. And when I got there, it was a lot more basic than I was expecting. It really was one step above a tent, I guess. It was such a rickety, shabby cabin. Uh, and I I kind of count on meeting people around me when I'm traveling. No, kind of. I always count on meeting people around me when I'm traveling solo. So I was imagining having one of these cabins in the middle of a whole bunch of cabins that it would be a good place to make friends because, it's Goa and that people are there to hang out on the beach and have a good time. That was so not what happened. That was not at all what happened. I I got there in the evening, and when I woke up the next day, I just got a whole bunch of dirty looks. I was not welcome there. There
Oh,
was
wow.
um, there was a woman's group from Poland, and it was all women, and it was meant to be all women. But this damn man right in the middle of us in this, I just okay. I don't, I felt just unwelcome. I don't know if they could speak English or not. I was not getting friendly hellos back.
Mm.
And, you know, I wasn't part of the environment for them, but I quickly discovered that I was renting a $10 cabin for $45 on
Mhm.
Airbnb. And how it happened was a Russian girl had rented the cabin and recognized people don't know what these cabins go for. I'm going to put it on Airbnb and charge for it. So she rented the
Ah,
cabin endlessly for $10 and kept renting it out to people who didn't know for 45. So you're getting the worst cabin that you can get on Goa and paying the medium amount for it. And if you don't know better, you just be kind of surprised how bad it is. Um, but for $10, it was a bargain. Like really, it was oh my, it was um. Sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't work out. My only friend that week was a from Norway, um, because the only other people there, honestly, were the Polish women who didn't want a man,
uh,
and Russians. There was a lot of Russians, and they were not
mm,
speaking back to me. They were not wanting to meet me. Like, they were not wanting to communicate. I would say
oh, wow.
hello when I walked by people, and I would because they're on the beach doing balls and spinning, and I'd come and I'd join them
Yeah.
dancing around the drums, but no one would talk back to me, and I would always be surprised when I could hear they spoke English, because I just thought,
Mm,
"Oh, yeah, no one speaks English," and then I'd hear English, and I'd be like, "Oh, wow, they do speak English. Oh, they're just really mean." Um, I was such
mhm.
an outsider at that beach, so sometimes it doesn't quite work. Um, it was but I was surrounded by foreigners, I was in India, but I wasn't among Indians at all. Um
Yeah.
and it stood out for such a different way. And I guess it was such a contrast to the inclusive feeling I felt in India generally, like you say. Like I
Yeah.
felt safe with people. I mean, sometimes people were shocked by me. So it wasn't like I felt like calmness. Like sometimes it's like, there's a foreigner here. But I never felt um I never felt contempt. I never felt disconnection, I guess. Like I always felt like I was just seen as a human among humans. Like if even not I just had an image of I was in Singapore and I was walking down the street and I bumped into this Indian couple and we were walking the same direction. And they had like a 5-year-old child. And I met them for a minute and then the child took my hand and was now walking down the street hand in hand with me as I was talking to his parents. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is just so sweet and so trusting. Uh, and that sort of reflects it more because people younger than call you uncle.
Oh, that's
They call stranger men uncle, and they call stranger women aunties. That language in itself makes a closer feeling. They're not saying "Hey, stranger," they're saying "uncle." Even in that language, they're sort of recognizing their connection to you. Like, you're an older male person, and I'm a younger male person, and I call you uncle. Like it's sort of it just that felt nice, you know. I accidentally
Yeah.
quit smoking when I was in India. That
Yeah.
was
Accidentally.
that was well, you know, it just happened. I was a cigarette smoker when I went, and I wasn't when I left. And
Right.
they were everywhere and they were cheap, but I just didn't need them. Just you know, it turned out it was one of the cruxes that I went on for
Mm.
stress or went on for needing to take a breath or but even though sometimes it was uh, cacophony, I mean the traffic was
Mm.
you just want to make sure you're in a secure vehicle sometimes. Because you know, like a 3-lane road can look like a 5-lane road. And then you very because it really was a melange. Because you know, it would be
Mm.
cars, three-wheelers and two-wheelers and camels and cows and motorbikes and
Oh,
rickshaws and trucks and like just everything, just and things hanging off the back of things and you know, women with babies hanging off of a bike with another like just it was just such a interesting stream of humanity on the roads there. You know, I couldn't imagine ever driving myself on the roads there. It was, um, generally, you know, the typical roads. Like, because I did my first trip to India was a 3-week tour of Rajasthan, and it was with a car and driver and one friend, and that was a very different tour. Um, and it was on
mm.
local roads and a lot of flat tires, things like that. Like literally, like or could be going like a whole hour. Could be like, oh my god, really? This
Oh, wow.
been doing this? You know, it just seemed like the kind of thing you might do for 2 minutes, getting between two major roads. Like,
Yeah.
no, just have sometimes, just sometimes, like the potholes for so long when you leave the major areas. Um, all part of the adventure, you know. And
Yeah.
so you just got to invent. You have to embrace whatever happens when you're traveling, and decide that whatever happens is what's happening, and not decide, well, if this happens, it's good, and if this happens, it's bad. No, don't 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 decide what's good, and bad. Just be open for whatever happens. We'll make the most of it. It's your hotel may look nothing like what they sell. It's you know, there's battles to be won and battles to be choose your battles, you know, when you travel. And,
Yeah.
you know, most of the time it's just not worth putting up a fuss for most of the things that happen most of the places. You're not gonna generally change the way a business is running. You're not gonna change the way a restaurant's being managed. You're not gonna change the way they make their food. Like, you know, most of the things that are
Yeah.
disappointing, we're not gonna change even if we fight them. So let's just accept this is the way it is here. and and enjoy it because it's absurd. You know, like walking down this street in Bangalore and suddenly it being like a crevice that you could have bumped and possibly died. Like, wow, like the sidewalk, sudden precipice, no sign, no blockage at all. You know, those kind of like things that we don't see so much in the places where they would get sued for it. Uh,
Yeah.
just really amusing to see it, you know. Uh, but I'm remembering one day of my life that I wanted to get back afterwards in in Paris, France. I was traveling alone. I was staying in a hostel. I met a friendly woman in the morning from oh, an American woman. I can't remember where she was from, but she was a art historian student. She was like, "Do you want to go explore today?" I'm like, "Sure." Oh, you know, she was friendly, but after an hour or 2 hours, the negativity, she was just a negative Nelly, you know, just everything was
Mm.
negative. It was like, oh my, I, oh, it's, you know, we all need to practice gratitude. It's a better way to be in the world. And the harder it is for you to reach gratitude, the more you need to do it because of the further
Mm.
you are away from it. We need to feel grateful. I need to stop and feel grateful for the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you and I'm perfectly comfortable and I'm safe. And I need to, I should feel good about that, because not everyone is. There's people that are cold right now. There's people that are hungry. There's people that are, in war-torn countries having horrible shit happening to them. We should, be grateful that we have what we have and we help create most of what we have. The way we are with others is generally how they are with us in return. And we choose who we bring in and who we push away. But um, that train left the station. Where did it start? Jeez.
Well, that was a beautiful message, though, and an important one. We were in general talking
Oh,
about challenges in travel and how some people tend
oh
to
yeah,
view it
riding the
more
waves. We
negatively.
need to ride the waves. Yeah. So she was, oh my God. She ended up saying, leave it to the French as her thing. And so every time she came across something that she thought was dirty or not good enough, I'll leave it to the French. Blah, 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 blah. Just, yeah. Yeah. We need to be open. The thing that she was complaining about were just different. They weren't deficits either, like they were just different.
Yeah.
Um, which this is really a roller coaster ride of memories. I'm having a lot of fun. I hope it's not too shaky but for the listener. But I was just remembering being in London. Um, yeah, I lost the last memory to make the next one. Where does that train just leave from? That's the ADHD. That's what it sometimes looks like. It like just sudden blank. And it's because my mind went to a different thought, you know, just explaining to the viewers what ADHD sometimes feels like. Um, so my mind was thinking of the story. Then I remembered working in this cafe, and then I was sort of in the cafe, remembering like, oh yeah, and then I forgot what I was talking about. So and that happens in just a split second with someone with ADHD. Um, uh, so there was a thread there. It doesn't matter so much. But yeah, we need to roll with the punches. There's sharing travel mishaps. It's can be a can be a thing also. So I seem to have gotten into the mishap stories. But things
Oh,
going
yeah.
wrong, things going wrong can be funny later. Because they're absurd. The absurdity of them, like the absurdity of being in this one bedroom apartment with five people, had me laughing about it when I was there. Like, oh my goodness, what is happening? Um, and I know other people would have been, there's people that wouldn't have taken it that way. Um, I, oh yeah, yeah, my goodness. Okay, just staying with mishaps, if that's okay. I was just remembering, I went to Swansea in, no, Cardiff in Wales. And I was, I was having this was part of my midlife crisis tour. And this part of the midlife crisis tour, I was touring around England in a car. Uh, so it was a road trip and I included Wales a little bit. So I had a Airbnb in Cardiff to see what it would be like to live in Cardiff for a week and see what it feels like to live amongst Welsh. And, I had rented out the unit this time. I didn't want to stay with anyone. I was looking forward to having space for myself. I do remember that quite clearly. And I was welcomed by a very friendly truck driver who introduced me to the flat and in great detail and then suggested we go for dinner. So then we went for dinner and then we came back and then it was sort of bedtime and he just didn't leave. He had rented out his unit as a unit. He didn't say rent out a bedroom. He didn't say join me in my place. It was a unit being rented. It was a whole unit. Like whether I met him or not was here. I didn't know if I was getting a key or if I'd meet the host.
Mm.
But anyway, he was a long haul trucker. And originally he had a long haul route around Europe this week, but it got canceled. So he's just to stay here with me.
Oh.
won't be any problem. You can take the bedroom. You can take the bedroom. He's like he's giving me a favor that I paid. The UK is not actually cheap, so it's we're not in India anymore. Not caring that we spent $45 and it's worth 10. We're not there anymore. Now we're in the UK. Spending hundreds of pounds. It's a different game that we're playing, and we spent enough that we could have been at a hotel. So
Mm.
so him just staying there on my couch was not the plan at all. And,
Yeah.
and not only that, we're just so very different. I mean, I didn't feel comfortable. I just did not feel comfortable with the person either. But in the end, I did check out and I went to a hotel and I get a refund by Airbnb. And he didn't understand why I didn't want to stay with them. But uh, sometimes those funny things happen too. It was, um, yeah, Croatia just came to mind suddenly. Wow, really am jumping around in the old memories tonight. Um,
It's wonderful. That's the
yeah,
best
with,
advertisement for travel that we can do.
with travel mishaps, they really can be so absurd, right? They stand out in your memory. Oh, and they make for good stories later. Ridiculous things that happen that are silly. And I had a, oh yeah, yeah. I I stayed in the city of York or the town of York, where York Minster is, and York
Mhm.
Minster in England. It's an enormous church. It has the second largest police force after the Vatican for private police
Oh,
forces. So it's a huge property. Um, and I remember being surprised by that on the walking tour. Um,
yeah.
but I stayed there for a week. I was staying places for a week. That was the theme of my midlife crisis. I wanted to go a whole bunch of places for a week and see what it felt like to be there. So in York, York is an old city that's surrounded by an old uh, wall. It's a walled city uh, with centuries and centuries of history. And I stayed in a coach house within the city homes. And I still don't quite know what I think about this myself, but so the inn I stayed in was full, and they rented me a room in their like garage coach house thing, and it was just a separate building to itself. And when I went, like I tried to open the door, and it opened, and then it felt like it was hitting a sofa. It was like because
Mm,
it was opening, but it wouldn't open. So it wasn't like the lock. No, it was something behind the
right.
door. So I went back to the front desk, and I said, I don't know if there's two doors to the unit, but there's like
Mm.
something in front of the door causing you to not be able to open it. Try to guess what she said next. Nothing coming to you.
Was it the actual bed that's right there?
Oh, that's our ghost, was what she said. Oh, that's our ghost. I said, like, the door actually opened. No, no, there's something in front of the door. Like maybe someone put something in
Right.
front of the door and then left from a different door. It's like, no, 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 that's the ghost. The ghost does that. Really? Okay. I don't believe in ghosts or not. So I just sort of held that up in the air, like, okay, well, let's go back and see what's happening now. She said, he lets me open the door. So let's go back together.
All right.
Are they playing a practical trick on the tourist? Like, do you think there was housekeeping climbing in the window, putting something in front and then, like taking it away? Because the door opened, like there was like no encumbrance whatsoever. It was,
Wow.
it was creepy. It's like, uh, are you okay with this room? It's our last room. Yeah, I guess so. Let's sleep with the ghost. Oh, but she said, there's ghosts around this town. It's just the way it is. I don't know. I still don't know how we feel about ghosts. I don't know.
I mean, it could have been a really good practical joke, but It that's an interesting story, and because she seemed to know, she's like, "Yeah, I can open the door, like, he will open it, like, let it open for me."
Oh, yeah, she was like, "He sometimes doesn't let other people in." Like, it's yeah, like the funny part was that was such a we're talking to the front desk clerk, and she's telling me like, "Oh, yeah, the toaster breaks sometime." Like, that was what was so
Right.
it was just like, "Oh, yeah, yeah." It was, yeah, York. York is a beautiful town too. It has a whole bunch of walking tours, um, all of them interesting. You know, because I was there for a week, I ended up doing a totally different walking tour every day. That was a lot of fun,
Mm,
and I got to learn a lot of history from those walking tours. Um, I highly recommend walking tours when you go places. Really.
I
I know a
love
lot of people are
walking tours.
anti-tourism, but yeah, you like them too. I mean, it's almost always a local, and if it's not a local, it's a traveler who's really into that place,
Yeah.
right? Very enthusiastic about it. And sometimes it's not a local, sometimes it's an Australian who's in Germany or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They're very enthusiastic about because they're doing the English language tour, so it might be a tourist sometimes, but they do a great job, really. Brazil comes to mind, but I'm thinking of walking tours the most. Um, be- Probably because Brazil wasn't the safest of countries, so walking tours was a good bet. Um, it was. I'm an intuitive person, and I make my way through the world mostly with intuition. How I feel is my guide, and I feel danger sometimes, and I get myself out of it when I feel that. Um, India, I really didn't ever feel danger. That wasn't
Mm,
something that happened in 3 months. Um, I was I had bad experiences. I was sometimes brutally treated, roughly treated, and sometimes had like a shock, like in the wrong neighborhood, and a beggar sees me and starts running towards me, and then someone else does, and now there's a whole bunch of people running at me, and now I'm surrounded by a mob, and they're all trying to, and it like that. That was really uncomfortable. Getting mobbed. Um, that happened once in India. That stands out. It's like that's when I was uncomfortable. Um, but apart from that, the people always almost. I mean, I always felt a calmness, a gentleness, a peace about the people, even if they were pulling my arm to come into their store and be rude. I didn't
mm,
feel unsafe. You know, um, some people were unscrupulous. Yeah, and you meet those people everywhere. Uh, but the feeling in Brazil, it could get hot and cold. I would I would turn a corner, and I immediately perceive like, oh, I have this is not a safe place for me to be, and it
right.
not really based on what it looks like because, like Sao Paulo is a beautiful city. There's a lot of beautiful buildings. There's a lot of plain buildings too. There's neighborhoods where there's 100 apartment buildings and they're all basically the same and all basically poor and plain apartment buildings. But most of the city is it's quite interesting and there's a lot of architectural interest. So a lot of the neighborhoods that are absolutely dangerous look just as nice as the neighborhood that isn't. Um, but I could feel the difference. It really, and I
Yeah.
always checked it out because I wanted to keep a gauge about how safe I was being. Um, and so I would intentionally look it up afterwards, like where was I when I did that? Because I could be, I would turn a corner and suddenly feel like I'm not safe. This isn't feeling right. There's something wrong about being here. And then I would look for a business like a pharmacy, and I'd step in the pharmacy and I'd get an Uber because that's one of the things you can do in travel in a lot of countries. Get an Uber.
Yeah.
So I would retreat inside a public business or a hotel or something, and then I would, any kind of thing, and then jump into the Uber and get myself out of the neighborhood where I felt like, yeah, this is not going right. Um, and yeah, there were some neighborhoods that had stats that were just unbelievable. Uh, Brazil does actually have some real pockets of anger, like, and I could just feel it bubbling up with people sometimes. Just a lot of really dispossessed, angry, contemptuous, like really stuck in anger and blame for the position. It's kind of unusual. It's like India had a lot of people that were also down and out and poverty stricken, but they didn't have that. That there wasn't an anger about it. There was a resignation because India has a class system that's that has a lot of problems too. There's people that are stuck in poverty and that they see it as that's the way they're supposed to live their lives, and they because of that class system, they don't have the same angst about it. It's it's totally
Yeah.
unfair, and it's absolutely it's basically racism, but it's not based on race. It's based on perceiving different values of people um, based on their status. But in Brazil, if you had a low status, you were pretty angry about it, and it was a very very different feeling. Um, I spent only a couple days in Rio because another friend had gone to Rio, and she ended up in the hospital, and
Well,
it's for mugging because she was with a mugging where the person broke a beer bottle and actually did stab her, and she did end up in the hospital. A
oh,
middle-aged woman. Um, so they didn't just take the purse; they had to do that as well. So that incident that had happened to my friend caused me to stay, very short time in Rio, because I perceived that I would feel, I did want to, and the statistics were pretty good for crime too. It wasn't like she was one of many. Um, but I felt absolutely fine there. Actually, when I was there, I regretted not staying in Rio longer. Um, it is one of those places where you have to have your wits about you because, of course, criminal can walk into a safe area of the city and now they're in a safe area, even though they're criminal. So it's like,
mm.
um, so that does exist. But the favelas are, so rough. You just don't go near them. Uh, so you need to be smart about where you do go in some countries. Other countries you can pretty much roam freely. Brazil is not a country to roam freely. It's a country to do some research about. Make sure you know, um, is it even safe to walk there as an individual? Because there are truly some places that aren't. Um, and I can't think of any other country I felt that probably about 40.
Yeah, that's an interesting one as well because actually my next bigger continent that I'm going to after Australia, because after New Zealand I'm going to go to Australia first, but then I really want to go to South America. And having lived in Portugal the last 4 years as well, I met a lot of Brazilians, and also in New Zealand, I've met Brazilians that I connected with really easily. And everyone, the first thing they said, especially here in New Zealand, they were like, when I came here, I felt so safe. It was such a new feeling to me,
Oh,
feel safe. And that's when it really hit me, and I was like, "Oh, wow, it really must be so different."
and at the same time, it's a place I would go back. I when I say it's dangerous, I don't say it as don't go there. I say it as don't go there without doing your homework first. You need to
Yeah, that's
like you
that's
can't
kinda what they said
like
as well.
I've gone places where I haven't done my homework and I've been lucky that it worked out okay. But oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the neighborhood that it was an actual infamous neighborhood, but I didn't realize it at the time. I stayed in quite a dangerous neighborhood of Los Angeles. Um, mm, Notorious neighborhood. I didn't recognize Inglewood. So I stayed in
Inglewood.
Inglewood. Um, didn't mean anything to me. Just sounded familiar. Well, it was familiar because it's somewhere you shouldn't go. Not familiar because it was familiar in the touristy sort of sense. Um, but honestly, I had no issues there at all. I most of the people I encountered were actually, uh, well, there were a lot of immigrant people there, in fact, and I was often the only white person I could see in the whole wherever I was. But I'm quite used to that, so that was fine. And I I never felt any danger really. There were weird things that happened, but Uh, like I remember a baby being passed out of a car and the car was just full of pot smoke coming out. Like, oh
Right.
God, what's happening? But I never felt like there was something going to happen to me. And I stayed downtown Richmond, Virginia, which, um, see, Canadian downtowns are where you want to be. Like, you know,
Mm.
Canadian downtowns are where, it's more interesting to live downtown in Canada. I love living downtown. And you can say that pretty much about all of our cities. That is not true for American cities. That they have crime rates that we cannot even imagine. Um, because we have murders like less than 300. They have less than like 30,000 or something. Like the difference
Mm.
is it's not comparable. We'll have the same number of murders in our whole country as they'll have for a neighborhood. Um, so it really is very different, and it is one of the places also to do research.
Yeah.
Surprisingly so, because there's two really different Americas going on. Where people have enough and where people don't have enough. And there's a lot of Americans who do not have enough, and there's a total double economy. There's so many people making $7, $8, $9 an hour. They can't live. There's so many people with a wage that is not livable. Like, and it causes anger and frustration and mental health problems just because of life being so difficult. Um, yeah, there's a lot of that. There's the minimum wage needs to come up everywhere, honestly, but it's really pronounced there more than other places. Um, a lot of people have a feeling that like social systems are communism, and it's
Right.
oh gosh, I guess they're going to see what happens now that they're going to lose probably all free healthcare. That's awful. That's a shame, but people don't understand. that- Anyway, um, I have a lot of favorite places in the U.S. too. It's such an interesting country because it has bubbles of uniqueness amongst it. Right? Um, there's regions that have just absolutely their own culture, and they're unique places to
Mm.
visit. And of course, one of those is like New Orleans. New Orleans
Oh,
has a real bohemian vibe, right? And the live music is just so cool. Like
it's my
it's
favorite city in the States. Every time
right.
someone asks me, I tell them New Orleans is my favorite city. I love it so
It's
much.
one of those. It's one of those bubbles of culture. Honestly, Asheville, North Carolina is another one. I that I experienced anyway, where it's a really conservative area, but Asheville's like this little bubble of love, I guess, in the middle of Billy Graham country. Um, New York City is another one, right? Where it's a unique place in America, where
Yeah.
Americans are typically New York rather than typically America. Like it has its own unique culture as well. And what I love about New York really is New Yorkers. I mean, they're
Mm.
we can't generalize. Well, we can. We can generalize a little bit. Generally speaking, New Yorkers have way less boundaries than Torontonians, for example. If if
Mm.
if I'm sat at a table with someone and there's a table right beside me, we're going to pretend we're not hearing them and we're letting them have pretend privacy. But if
Mm.
in New York, they join each other's conversations regularly. Like
Right.
it's we'll be talking about this, and all of a sudden they've jumped right in. They're just putting their views in there too. It's like I like that. I just I
Mm.
like that lack of boundaries. Honestly. Going on the subway and some old woman telling me about her brother's car problems and like, oh my god, when I go home, man, just talking about her life to a
Yeah.
stranger on the subway. The London Tube, they just sat there like this because I lived in London before cell phones were interesting. Because at the time
Right.
when I lived in London, we had to go, beep, beep," like we had to use the numbers to make letters. Can you imagine texting where you had to use the number pad? They haven't conceived the idea of of, uh, of doing it any different. So you have to press things 3 times to get seen, 3 times to get like
Yeah.
it really was like almost Morse code using your phone. So people weren't used to their phones, but they were not talking to each other on the subway. That was one thing that really struck me coming from New Brunswick, Canada, where everyone knows each other. You say hello because if you don't know them, know someone they know. Um,
Yeah.
Going to London where, I lived in Zone 3, and I had a schedule. So I actually tended to see the same people on the tube station, coming from Black Horse Road every single time to get to go see people I saw. But say hello to them, my goodness, it's like a slap them in the face. Like, oh, I want to make a routine. I'm not talking to anyone. Oh my. So I really value, the New Yorker inclusivity. They really know how to just let live. And they communicate in a really open way. I find they they don't keep you
Mm.
guessing for how they feel about something. They will tell you quite
Right.
directly. Uh, I've rented Airbnbs in New York 3 times, where I stayed for a month in an apartment. So I've been able to have neighbors in New York a few times. And just matter of fact, expect what just say it like it is. Um, Knock on the door. It's like, I can hear everything. You're blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'll do it. But they don't have any, a Canadian might like wait, like, oh, I don't want to bother them. Oh, maybe they'll be quiet soon. Oh, what,
Mm.
but they were, they'll hear something and it's like, oh, I'm not, like, because we were making Christmas dinner. We were literally using the kitchen for the first time ever. So he had heard a knife going chop, chop, chop for 2 minutes. Like before he
Right.
came to the door, knock, saying, I can hear your knife chopping. It wasn't like he heard it chopping for 6 hours. It was just like, oh, let me go tell them that I can hear this before they bug me all day. Um, that's so not gonna, you wouldn't do that. You would put up with that noise, even if it was a noise that would make them feel annoyed by it, resentful. It's just like they just deal with it. They're living on top of each other. They're all different kinds of people living on top of each other as well. So it's extremely inclusive feeling, you know? Like to be gay or of any kind of background whatsoever is just part of the mix. There's a feeling of equality, I find, like a feeling of um, when they don't think you're a tourist, there's a feeling of
Right.
equality.
Right.
Like so many places, tourists are loved, and tourists are seen as different, a different species. Um, so when you rent a place for a month, you're able to get the tourist species. Um,
Yeah.
to meet people hanging out in their local parks and hanging out in their local places. And yeah, although the friend I met the last time I was in New York was a yoga teacher from London, England, actually. Um, but you can meet people from anywhere. Um, you got to push yourself out when you're traveling too. It's studies show that people talk to strangers are happier than people who don't talk to strangers. And you just need to check your ego and push yourself out there and say what you want, actually. Say what you need, actually. So I was newly staying in Washington Square Park, which is, I love that neighborhood in
Yeah.
Manhattan. And I was in the park, and for some reason, so somehow I ended up chatting to the person beside me, and I liked the person. I liked their energy. They seemed like interesting. And I said something like, I have a friend vacancy. Do you want to go for dinner tonight? And and he was like, I have a friend vacancy too. Yeah, let's do it. Um, because he was a yoga teacher visiting from London. It was cat sitting for friends in Soho. So he
Mm.
was alone in Soho. I mean, it was just a transfer from London and Soho for a month cat sitting. So yeah, he had a friend vacancy too. Let's hang out. Um, it's a weird thing to do, just pick up a straight guy at
Yeah.
the park. But um, it's, it's sort of how it seems like people are just so careful with each other now. Like, uh, use your intuition. We're just not used to feeling with each other and to feel our safety with each other. You know, um, people apply the same sort of boundary of being careful with everyone instead of being able to keep people away that they perceive as not safe and letting actually people close that they feel like, yeah, I feel you as a safe person. People aren't using those intuitions. They're just keeping everyone at a distance. Um, that's no good at all. That's not a fun way to travel. You got to be open to meeting the locals and interacting with them. And I can see that their time really comes to uh, check out what time my session. Um, oh yeah, comes to an hour and a half. I see it goes quickly with you, Mike.
Yeah, it does.
You
And
let me
yeah,
ramble.
I mean, it really was so good though because we had so many amazing memories and just insights, but also um through your stories we heard the things that are important in travel, and not only in travel but um every now and then when we talked about gratitude, when we talked about letting people close, intuition, just for a general happier life, and therefore, yeah, it was so valuable, and I also feel like we could probably do this for 4 or 5 hours. But as as you said, yeah, we already did the 1.5 hour mark, and we did get very valuable insights from you. Um, so yeah, basically, I think that's a good place for us to wrap it up for today. So if you want to tell the people, because we have enjoyed your travel stories and we have enjoyed you and your personality as well through your stories. Um, so if people want to find out more about you actually and the stuff you do and the things you put out, maybe just tell us a little bit more about that and where people can find you online. And I'll obviously put all the links in the description as well so they can easily get there.
But the thing I'm most excited about right now, and because I think it makes a big difference in a lot of people's lives, um, I just created a free fatherhood program. And
Hmm.
basically, as a therapist, I watch a lot of men being out of touch with their emotions. And if you're out of touch with your emotions, you are not going to be in touch with your kids' emotions either. So it doesn't work to be out of touch with your emotions. And honestly, it's become a set point. It really has become. Um, a lot of men came back from, oh, we're launching into another sermon here, Mike. A lot of men came back from wartime with PTSD, and that became a model for a lot of families. Um, where dad basically had PTSD. He was expected to be happy because he's back from war, but he was actually traumatized. And instead of being a good dad, he's actually a traumatized dad, not able to be in touch with his emotions, getting triggered into anger usually. Um, but also, not having compassion. Like the kid comes home from school crying because Billy punched me. And like, oh, buck up and be a man. How much could Billy punch you? I
Mm.
quit the war. Someone shot me to the shoulder. You know, and they turn the kids off from a really young age because of their own trauma. And they also, those PTSD guys also treated their wives horribly in a lot of cases, and it wasn't their fault. They put up with the abuse. Yeah, they weren't like that before the war, but that's all the kids need. That emotional immaturity has become a bit of an epidemic. It's because you don't. Your father is your model. I mean, there are a lot of fathers who are just holding it together with PTSD who taught their kids just hold it together and don't feel your emotions. That was
Mm.
only meant for wartime. It's not working out. So I've created a father's fit program um, that helps. It's for men to get in touch with your emotions more, like to slow down and to learn to feel because they've been taught not to feel and they really need to.
Yeah.
I meet couples where the wife is essentially alone emotionally and the husband has no idea what's wrong. And it's like, if you never go to
Mm.
sadness and something sad happens, she's alone in her sadness and you're vacant. And that means she's emotionally alone. That means she's not supported by you emotionally. And that is not how we're meant to deal with this pack animals. We are meant to release our emotions together. But a lot of families have, they're trying to be strong alone. So I feel very excited about the fatherhood program because it changes the mental health of the family. When dad is able to attune with the kids to see what they need and what they want, and to be able to actually be an emotional leader rather than an emotional avoider, it causes a lot of problems avoiding emotions, like a lot of problems. And I can tell you, the election reflects it. Honestly, it's a true reflection of what's happening emotionally to people right now. Um, you don't grow up by not feeling your emotions. If you don't get good at playing soccer by not playing soccer, and you don't grow up emotionally by avoiding your emotions. There's a lot of people who
Right.
have not grown up emotionally by avoiding their emotions. And it's so fatherhoodprogram.ca is a free 4 session program that anyone can do. Point your dad towards it, get him in touch with feelings. I wrote video scripts and worksheets for 4 different lessons on fatherhood. Um, the intention is that if someone wants to go further into the work, I'm here to go further in the work. But it's absolutely by itself um, something that people can use as a resource. And there's a lot of worksheets on my website for personal growth, like boundaries, practicing gratitude, active listening, those kind of things. So if they go to fatherhoodprograms.ca, uh, oh, maybe no father, but go fatherhoodprograms.ca. That'll lead you to one of my things. I have a lot of different things up there. It's, I'm an ADHD kid, Mike. I have like, I don't even do my own social media, but I have like so many different accounts for different things. I'm also
Right.
a singing therapist, so I have an account for that. And I'm also a recovering narcissist drag queen, so I have an account for that as well. So I have a lot of different things on the go.
Well, I'll make sure to plug it all in the description, so that people can check it out if they feel like it. And obviously, the fatherhood program, which sounds amazing and useful. So make sure to check that out. Um, yeah, Darren, thank you so much. This was really, really entertaining, and I enjoyed listening to your stories, and it definitely put a lot of places on my list, and really motivated me again to travel and just go into the uncertainty, discover things, and just see all the things our world has to offer. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing the journey. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thank you so much. And I just want to leave one last idea. If if you enjoy travel, and probably your listeners do, plan your next trip. Start planning your next trip. Even if you can't afford it, start planning your next trip. So you have a plan, like in 2 years, I'm going to go here, or in 4 years, I'm going to go there. Like plan your next trip because studies show looking forward to the trip itself brings as much joy as the trip itself. So
Right.
like let yourself plan it. Let yourself look forward. When we're looking forward to it, we're feeling good, right? You're like, oh, this is going to be fun. Oh, this is going to be exciting. So let yourself do the
Yeah.
research. Actually, it's nice to let things unfold when you hit the ground, but do let yourself plan in advance so that you get the mental health benefits of having a plan before you have the finances or before you have the vacation days. Um, and so you can make a plan so that you get those vacation days saved up and get those finances saved up. Because, life can't be an adventure if that's your priority. Some people put priority on having, knuckles on their jacket that they spent $1,300 for. I would way rather that be a flight somewhere. So,
Yeah.
for me, adventures matter more than a lot of other things. But um, you only have one life that we know of. So use it, enjoy it, and enjoy the other people along the way. Thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure to go on and on and on and on.
Well, I'm very, very glad, generally that you enjoyed it. And yeah, with that, I will say goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.